Hello, yes. It's the return. The goat. Return of the Rickon. Return of the Rick King. It's the Rickoning. All right, I'm out of word jokes. Grey Waste Tim, where are you? Hey, I've got a thing over my head. What's going on? Hey, there we go. This looks like a live stream. Oh, a giant R. The red R. It is the Rickoning. Oh, no, I muted you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Tim. Say your clever remark again.
I said it is the Rickoning.
Yes. Long awaited, long awaited. Good news, folks. It's a good thing we waited because we've got new ideas. Just this morning, me and Grey Waste Tim, the newly shorn Grey Waste Tim, we're jamming. And we came up with some new stuff, with some Winds of Winter predictions of all things for the one and only Rickon Stark. So, far from a Shaggydog story, he's got a role to play in the Winds of Winter and in the reckoning of House Frey. Oh, did I just make a rhyme? I totally did. Clip that. Mickey, help me out. Clip that. All right. What's up to my mods? What's up to everyone in the chat? As you can see on the screen, we would like you to subscribe to our YouTube channels if you have not done so already. Of course, to my left is the Grey Waste Tim at Grey Waste. It's Grey, but if you just put in Grey Waste, you find it one way or the other. And of course, I am David Lightbringer. So thank you. That's a fake name. The first part's real. Second part, not what my parents came up with, but that's all right. We all can control our own destiny at times. So thumbs up the stream if you're watching. And if you want to join our conversation in the Discord, which is a safe and happy place to talk about things, Song of Ice and Fire, and many other things, life in general, you can do that. You can get an invite to our Discord. It is semi-private, but you can easily get an invite. You can use the join button here on YouTube to become a channel member squisher, or you can join Patreon. And you can even join Patreon for free if you don't have extra loot coming out your pockets to give me for the program. That's totally fine. We welcome your participation. Just sign up on Patreon for free and you get an invite. And yeah, so there you go. I do need to put a fresh invite, but I will do that right after the stream. Somebody remind me. Hey, Maynard James Plum, are you listening? All right. So we did a stream 2 weeks ago, Tim and I, about the wildlings. And we were going to tack on a little bit of a reckoning at the end. But we ran out of time, and it's a good thing we did. Because like I said, we came up with some new stuff. So Tim, what I thought we would do is actually reverse the order of what we're doing. Before we read all these quotes, let's run through the predictions part of it so that people understand our frame of thinking. And then we'll go through the quotes so that we can fully reap the benefits of any foreshadowing that are in there. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I thought that would make more sense to do it that way.
So Skagos, I'll just scroll down and I'm on the same page you are. Okay.
Cool. So Tim has, again, Tim is bringing a lot to the stream today. So we're going to start off with some, well, I guess let's sum up where Rickon is, but we're going to quickly get into some strange childhood stories. Rickon is a child. And so George apparently is drawing inspiration from childhood stories, where the wild things are. 3 Billy Goats Gruff. Those are the ones we found. So we'll get into that, and maybe the chat will help us with another one as we talk about this. But yes, of course, Rickon is now on Skagos. As we know, he was taken charge, but after the burning of Winterfell, Osha the Wildling took him somewhere while everyone else, Bran and Summer went the other way, as we remember. And we learned his location in that very stunning scene, the Davos chapter, where he's talking to Wyman Manderly, and Wyman basically is saying, wow, we found Wex, and we taught Wex's letters, and he pointed on the map, and we figured out what's going on. So essentially, Davos has been sent to Skagos to get Rickon back. And so that's where this all starts. But we're going to talk about Skagos. We're going to talk about a very interesting parallel to a couple of Targaryen kings from the era of House of the Dragon, Dance of the Dragons. And again, this is the Tim find because he's Mr. Blackfire, of course. But yeah, let's start off with where the wild things are. Tim, sum up
Yes.
our story. And in case you don't remember, I'll pull up a picture from the book while you sum up the story, just so we can jog people's memory. It was the picture that sort of reminded me about this. So,
Yes. So it seems like since Rickon is the youngest Stark child. He's only 3 when the story begins, and as time is a few years have progressed, but so even now he'd only be about 5, 6 years old at most. And what it seems to me is that George seems to be pulling his own little Brothers Grimm style thing with Rickon, and that includes 2 children's stories, Where the Wild Things Are, and the 3 Billy Goats Gruff. So Where the Wild Things Are is a 1963 children's picture book written and illustrated by Maurice Sandek. If I'm hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. He's also the illustrator for the Little Bear series of children's tales. Essentially, what Where the Wild Things Are is, our main character is a kid named Max who dresses up as a wolf and causes trouble around his house. So his mother sends him to bed without his supper. When he goes into his room, we enter a dreamscape. His room transforms into a jungle, and he sails to an island of monsters. The monsters try to scare him, but he is not intimidated. Max stares them down, stares straight into their yellow eyes. And so the monsters name him as their king. They go on to have frolicking fun, but then Max, imitating his parents, decides to send the monsters to bed without their supper. And again, like, this is all about the crux of the story is it's children dealing with their emotions, like anger and rage and all of that. But after he sends the monsters away, he realizes he's lonely, they're lonely, they come back, they get together, but then he decides he needs to go home, so he abdicates his throne and sails home. The monsters don't want him to go. The story ends with Max returning to his room, opening his door, and finding a hot supper is waiting for him. And it's one of like the most famous children's tales, mostly because of the artwork. The artwork is so standout and amazing.
and as you saw, as I flashed it up on the screen, like, there is King Rickon. So there he is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a great thing because, of course, Rickon is dealing with anger. He has been left alone and abandoned by his family, essentially, from his point of view. And his wolf is furious. He's furious, and that's kind of one of the main things we know about him. So it's a very applicable story. Literally, an island of monsters, Skagos, the cannibals, Skagosi, and they're enormous unicorn goats. They're enormous goats, hairy goats with one horn. So these are George's unicorns. I believe it is an ancient extinct animal. There's a lot more. There's actually several animals that have some sort of one horn thing, like unicorns. There's a deer in like South Asia that's like a unicorn looking deer that you find in the Harappan civilization carvings and stuff. And yeah, so this is some sort of enormous goat with not 2 horns, but 1. And we know that they are, yes, thank you, Elasmotherium. In fact, I have a picture of one somewhere. Maybe I'll pull it up in a second. Good knowledge, Jetlag 89. Elasmotherium, probably. So it's going to be narwhals. Well, so we've seen one. It was in Ghost's vision. He caught a glimpse. See, the wolves have a telepathic network, the dire wolf net, as we've called it. And it was Ghost that saw a vision of Shaggydog fighting with an enormous goat with 1 horn. And this thing is big enough to fight with Shaggydog. So it is a big thing. And we do expect the Skagosi potentially to be riding them. Maybe only the wargs, but maybe they've tamed them. Pretty sure Elasmotherium is a woolly rhinoceros. Yeah, it could be that. It could. Maybe that's not quite right, because they are described as goats, not a rhino. But who knows? We'll see them in any case. And so, what was I saying? So these are monsters. I think that's where I got lost. They are monsters to the eyes of the Westerosi. Of course, they're people, and it's they probably don't do cannibalism every day. There's cannibalism all through the North, is the honest truth. So, and north of the Wall. But yeah, this is Rickon. He's going to sail to the island of the monsters. So what does this tell you? He's named king of the monsters, and he's not scared. I think that's the part that's going to overlap the most, don't you think, Tim?
Yeah, because Rickon's standout feature for being such a small child is his bravery. The fact that him having the most wild and feral of the direwolves. Now, this could be because he is a child and he doesn't know fear, but no, at 6 years old, they would know fear right now. But Rickon definitely is the real wolf of the Stark family. He has the wolfish features. So him being so young and having all this old god imagery seems to be like the major points to him. And so him going to an island of monsters and them trying to scare him, but only for this little kid to just stare them down and then these monsters to start groveling to him makes perfect sense. And I do think that when Davos reaches Skagos, he's going to find Rickon probably thriving, I would say, thriving there, doing really well.
And so, as we discussed in the Wildling stream, Tim, the North forgets. You know, they've kind of the Wildlings are closer to original First Man culture in some ways than the people south of the Wall, even the Starks and the Blackwoods and people like that. So, Skagos is interesting and was going to be included in the Wildling stream because it kind of is it's in the middle. It's not. I mean, it's barely settled. You know, it's barely conquered. It was just only 100 years ago that the Starks had to go up there and put down a rebellion and restrict their naval rights. Isn't that right, Tim? Correct me. I think I garbled that.
No, you're correct. So
is that the Barth Blacksword one too? Or is that a different thing?
Yes, that's where Barth Blacksword goes down. So this is happening during the time of King Daeron II. So this is around the time as the first Blackfire Rebellion. It's notable that the North, aside from the fifth Blackfire Rebellion, which is the War of the Nine Penny Kings, the North has sat out all of the Blackfire Rebellions, and that's always because they're always at the same time the Blackfire Rebellions are going on, they're always dealing with their own problems. So around the time that the first Blackfire Rebellion is brewing, the North is dealing with a rebellion in Skagos. It says it took years for them to put it down, and it ended with, and it said like it took years for it to be put down. But one thing we know is that the Skagosi, when they finally were conquered, as much as we can say they were conquered, one of the things that happened is they had their rights to the sea taken away. Their ships were burned and destroyed, and they were revoked the rights to the sea. So it makes the Skagosi sound when during this time when they were raiders and reavers, it makes them sound a lot more like Ironborn. And that's why I've come to calling the Skagosi and the Ironborn are like the two thorns in the north side. From the east, they're getting hit by the Skagosi, and from the west, they're getting hit by the Iron Islands. So putting the Skagosi down is like only gives them enough time to just worry about the focus on the Ironborn now.
And of course, you know, Stoneborn, Ironborn, like we're pretty close. There's some similarities there. And of course, we do find some weird ancient First Man stuff going on the Iron Islands. Check out my many videos about the Ironborn.
And of course, it's where does iron ore come from? It comes from inside stones.
Yeah, and they talk about salt and stone. Bless them with salt, bless them with stone. Yeah, it's all. A lot of parallels there. So, point is, yeah, Skagos is only heart trees see half of what goes on Skagos. I think that's Roose Bolton that says that. So, we don't know how much truth there is to the cannibalism stuff, but we know that, like I said, cannibalism is running around in the North in general, and then there's all this weirwood heart tree sacrifice too that sometimes gets confused with it because they're sort of like feeding people to the tree, and the Ironborn have the myth about the tree that eats people. So, you know. Then we have the Black Gate, which literally swallows Bran, which we'll talk about. By the way, just to tease, we've got Winds of Winter predictions not only for Rickon and Shaggydog, but for House Frey and for Hodor and a couple other things too. So stay tuned if you're watching this stream. We've got some unexpected gems coming here. It's been a few years since the last book, Tim, but we are still
Just a
We are
few.
still, we are still churning up new finds though. So, oh no, we don't worry, devoted to Mariah. I will not only tease you. We will deliver as well. So we will deliver. All right. So this is there's a hot supper waiting for then. So obviously Rickon is going to become a cannibal and is going to be eating things. And by the way, this is probably a good point to tease my video coming out this week about the cannibal, not the cannibals on Skagos, the cannibal the dragon, who, like Shaggydog, is a black dragon with green eyes. It's interesting, isn't it? That
Mhm.
Rickon and Shaggydog go to the island of cannibals, and then the cannibal looks like Shaggydog. I'm not sure what George is doing there. I think it's some green sea. All the cannibalism symbolism is about the Weirwood Net, I think, but let's not get lost on that. Point is, Cannibal the Dragon video coming this week. So look
Yeah.
out for that.
Oh, good. I just want to point out, Mae Burnett brought up, as for cannibalism, Max says, I will eat you up. Yes, in Where the Wild Things Are, when the monsters are trying to intimidate Max, and Max is intimidating them right back, that is a threat he makes. He tells the monsters that I'll be the one to eat you up.
That's cool. And yes, Cannibal Dragon. I will have you going, aw, for Cannibal the Dragon by the end of the video, I promise. And you'll be like, wait, what just happened? So that's coming. Yes, anyway, so with shout out to the Donner Party. Yes, I'll make all the jokes. All the jokes. And okay, so like we said, the Skagosi, that means stoneborn, and they seem to have Ibonese blood. Okay, now the Ibonese are, loosely speaking, some sort of Neanderthal, like humanoid. Well, the Ibonese themselves actually are hybrids. They seem to be partly descended from the hairy men, who are Neanderthals, but they're not quite. Uh, who knows? This is all pretend evolution. But the Ibonese, can they have children with normal people? They can, right?
So that's the thing that's weird about the Ibonese is we're told that children of Ibonese and non-Ibonese can happen, but that they usually come out sterile. So the part about, but yet we have characters like Brown Ben Plum who claims to have Ibonese blood. So it comes to as like, is all this stuff written in stone, or are there exceptions to the rule? Are there Ibonese offspring that with non-Ibonese that are able to procreate?
Well,
Because
see, I
how
questioned that though because we have the original hairy men, and then the Ibonese are supposedly like hybrids of them. So the hairy men somehow interbred with people
Mhm.
and made hybrids. So those hybrids would be closer to people. But maybe I'm not a geneticist and shouldn't.
I think
So,
what we're get. I think what we should take everything the maesters say with a grain of salt. So this is an ironclad. Like, are all Ibonese, half Ibonese offspring sterile? Maybe the majority of them are, but that's not to say that occasionally one might not come. There might not be a time where one comes out who is able to continue their own family line
so
because.
the other thing that's said about the Skagosi is that they could have giant's blood. Um,
Mhm.
and then, of course, the original hairy men were very tall. So me and Tim have debated this before, like how this evolutionary tree works. Like, were humans created from giants and hairy men and children of the forest, or is there just separate branches on an evolutionary tree? Do some of the
Mhm.
human animal hybrids, were they humans that were mixed with animals, or are they like alternate branches? Like, it's hard to tell what George is doing with all that. But the point is that the people of Skagos seem to be a little bit different, meaning like they're a little bigger, they look a little more robust, maybe a little thicker brow ridge or something, like enough to where people are like, they might be related to giants or the Ibonese. The Ibonese is more likely because the Ibonese are known for sailing. There are, Ibonese whalers, is how we usually hear the phrase. So they're
Yeah.
sailing all over the Shivering Sea, and
Mhm.
Skagos is right there. So it makes sense that they would stop by on Skagos, and there would be some amount of intermingling. But we also know the Umbers, well, not know, but we suspect strongly that the Umbers do have a little bit of giant's blood, as do other humans in the north at times. So
Mhm.
again, who knows? But this is the continuum that the Skagosi are on. I think we've given you a good idea. And then they, of course, they ride the goats. And there was something called the Feast of Skane one time. There's two islands. There's the big island, Skagos, and a small island called Skane. Skane used to have people, Tim, but what happened, supposedly?
Supposedly, the island was raided by Skagosi. All of the women and children were taken off, R-worded, but all of the men were put to the slaughter and eaten. And this sounds a lot like Ironborn raids, the first half, but Ironborn, they'll murder the men, but according to what we're told in the Feast of Skane is the men of Skane were not just murdered, they were eaten. That this was a blood feast, a cannibalistic blood feast that lasted for a fortnight, and Skane remains uninhabited to this day.
Yeah, so this is one of those things where there's probably some truth to it. I don't really see any reason to disbelieve it, to be honest. Like I said, cannibalism is definitely practiced in the North, and it is practiced in human culture, kind of like more than you think, surprisingly. So, yeah, it's just one of those things. I got a super chat just now. I need this thought tonight. Ciaran says, would Bloodraven have tried to enlist Rickon because he's, quote, more naturally powerful than Bran? How much more powerful is he? So I don't subscribe to that idea that he is more powerful than Bran. I think all the Starks are pretty powerful. Like Arya wargs her wolf from across the sea, and she wargs a cat. We don't see anybody else do that. So is Arya the most powerful warg? I don't know. Jon definitely seems to be slow in developing his gift because he's sort of resisting it mentally. But the potential strength of his bond is sort of suggested as very strong when it comes to life. Rickon has his wolf at a younger age than other people. And so I think that is going to affect him. Like, it's kind of like starting a kid on, karate or ice skating or a different language. The earlier you do it, the more it gets zipped up into the fiber of their being and the more natural it's going to be for them. So Rickon's young age, getting his wolf so young, he's probably going to be a very strong warg and an intuitive warg. We'll have to see what that comes out like. I've compared him to Varamir before in that sense, because Varamir had his powers come to him when he was like 2, and he killed his brother, and he has problems with anger. So that's a little darker than Rickon, but that's like kind of the darkest end of the spectrum. So I do expect Rickon to be like riding his wolf in a sort of symbiotic relationship in the way that we see Varamir riding his snow bear. So Rickon's warging is going to be kind of constant and fluid, probably, as opposed to consciously going in and out of warg dream. Like he's kind of going to be with one eye open all the time, I bet, just like riding the wolf, in tune with the wolf. And this is a reason why the Skagosi will probably look at him as a potential prince. Like he's a warg prince. The fact that he's a warg makes him a prince in first man culture, I feel like.
Yeah, I like that idea too, because the idea of Rickon blending his warg abilities, going in and out of Shaggydog, like let's say in the blink of an eye, it would make him the closest thing to an actual werewolf in the story if he's able to utilize his power in that type of way.
Yeah, so I don't really see a blood. Well, okay. I guess the thing we could question is that, Rickon has a vision of Ned's death, of Ned down in the crypts. I don't think he mentions a crow like Bran does.
No, but what we do
read
know,
that scene though. So
yeah. Well, when it comes to the Dreamers, it doesn't seem like Bloodraven was specifically seeking out any one child, because when Bran has his falling dream and he sees the bones of failed dreamers, it seems like Bloodraven has been sending out these dream messages to more people than just Bran, and just been hoping that someone's going to make it, because there are failed dreamers. And we see examples, because Euron may be a failed dreamer if he was initially contacted and that connection was severed, either because Bloodraven saw what he was, or because of the lack of weirwoods. Patchface seems like a failed dreamer. So I think Bloodraven it's not that he was looking for one specific kid. It seems more like he was sending out mass emails and just hoping that someone would eventually show up.
Well, he definitely uses some language to Bran about how he's watched him since he was born and all this stuff. So I think there is some indication that he might be keyed in on Bran. But that's an interesting idea that he might be doing that. It's a little bit of a side debate, but let's do a poll, Maynard Plum. Do you think that Bloodraven has sent dreams to Rickon? Because I think that psychic dreams can come from Direwolf Net. I don't think they have to come from the Three-Eyed Crow. I think if you are a warg, you can have psychic dreams, but that's not clear one way or the other, I don't think. So yeah, let's make that the poll. Do we think that Bloodraven has sent dreams to Rickon? That's an interesting question. I think I would vote no, but I don't feel strongly about it. We are going to read the scene where they find Rickon in the crypts, where he talks about having that same dream. So we'll see if he mentions a crow. I don't remember him mentioning a crow. Mm-hmm. Can't wait to see the woolly rhino unicorn. Yeah. You and me both, buddy. Been talking about it for a hot second. So give Maynard Plum a second, and he'll get that poll up, and we will give you a chance to vote on that. So let's talk about the houses of Skagos, Tim. There are 3. And the most important one is House Magnar, because their name is House Magnar. And we know that Magnar means king or god king in the old tongue. And so it is very likely that House Magnar is some sort of ruling house, or used to be a ruling house, something like that, right?
Yeah, because the fact that their name is Magnar, which is the old tongue word for Lord, God, King, and the fact that their seat is called King's House, it does make them sound like this sort of Lord Paramount of Skagos.
Does seem like a clue, King's House, yeah.
Yeah. And the sigil of House Magnar is a green lobster holding onto a black harpoon. So that makes, so symbolically, they're also a squisher house.
A squisher house, and there are green people in the sea. Yes, so there's some symbolism there we're going to play with in a hot second. But yeah, King's House, King Lobster. And then there's, that sounds like a band, King Lobster. And then we've got House Crowl of Deep Down.
Yeah, the other 2 houses, they sound a lot like Ironborn houses with their imagery. House Crowl of Deep Down and House Stain, who have a driftwood tree sigil that looks exactly like that of House Stone Tree in the Iron Islands and House Blackwood in the Riverlands. All this old god imagery with these dead trees.
And just to the point of Kimberly's super chat, yes, they worship the old gods. I would be surprised if there was Children of the Forest there, because they'd be kind of isolated on the island unless the tunnels are really deep and go under the sea, which you can't rule out. We don't know how deep they are, but probably no children there. Yes, there are apparently weirwoods, according to Roose Bolton. So
yeah, because that line from Roose, only the heart trees know what goes on in Skagos. If there are weirwoods on Skagos, and Skagos being an island.
Are you cosplaying as Jesse or James from Team Rocket?
I wasn't doing Jesse or James. I'm just a regular, average, run-of-the-mill Team Rocket grunt. It's more
non-applicable, just a t-shirt. Okay. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, my other squishers. And we're caught up. Very good. Thanks, guys. So yeah, there's those 3 houses. We looked up, we found that Stain is Scottish for stone, so it's just kind of right in keeping. And then their sigil is a driftwood tree. So Tim, yeah, you mentioned the Ironborn parallel, House Stone Tree. And these both seem to be named for the idea that weirwoods turn into stone. That's the stone tree. And the idea of tying it with driftwood. Yeah, it's just so parallel to the Ironlands. And in fact, I think we can look at the lobster sigil and the driftwood tree stuff and say that probably there's a layer of squisher cultural influence here. They're on an island. We know that the squishers have farmed people at White Harbor. That's not far. So, I mean, you
Mhm.
know, and
Yeah.
they've even been sighted at Hardhome, and they worship crab gods at Hardhome. That's Storhold's point. So yeah, the squishers were everywhere. As I always like to say, check out the Deep Ones Are Real video, because they are.
Yeah.
Tim, do
And
you
how
know? Pause. If I'm sorry, I just want to share my
Mhm.
disbelief for a second. Do you know that there are some people, respected theorists with good YouTube channels, who completely deny the existence of fish people? Not going to name names, but
it's
I'm
all
just
over the place, though. Some there are literal fish people on the Thousand
I weep
Islands.
for them. I am sorry. I just want them to be in the circle, and they're not in the
Yeah.
circle. It's okay. It's okay. All right. So we've got a little bit of Squisher influence. We've got some Ironborn parallels,
Mhm.
and as we covered, they used to be at least somewhat competent mariners until the Starks said no, no, no.
Mhm.
So that's the basic idea of the Skagosi. And how's our poll doing? That's about what I would expect. It's about 60%. I think
Yeah.
I think people err on the side of, yeah, probably Bloodraven did that, when put to any general question, which is safe. I think that's a safe answer. He's definitely does whatever he wants to do. So there we go. I do think potentially that just being a ward can give you psychic dreams, but again, we don't know that at all. So we'll see if there's any clues in the passage when we read it. Now, when we're talking about going forward, like we said, this has a lot to do with Wyman Manderly's planning. Wyman Manderly, dramatically said the Mummers farce is almost done, and essentially this is a dumb show that they are performing for the Freys and Lannisters. And he needed his other son home, it's Wendell, I believe, who was imprisoned. That Arya helped free him, actually, at Harrenhal. He had been doing some cannibalism, actually, unfortunately, not by choice.
Yeah.
Uh,
So people are
it was
asking,
the
well,
goat. Was it the goat that was making him, or was it who did that to him?
what? I'm sorry. What are we?
Who was
Who
it
did?
that fed human meat to Wendell Manderly when he was captive at Harrenhal? Who was in control of Harrenhal? Was that
Oh,
Gregor?
that. Yeah. Was that still Vargo Hoat, or was that the mountain? I know the mountain feeds Vargo Hoat his own legs. I
And I
definitely
think
remember.
that's because Vargo Hoat was like making people cutting off limbs and he made Wendell Manderly. Yeah. Oh, people are saying it was the Mountains Men. Um, the Bloody Mummers.
Mhm.
Not Vargo Hoat is okay. No, the Mountains Men are different than the Bloody Mummers. Vargo Hoat is the Bloody Mummers. Um,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
cool. Well, we're
So.
gonna. I was just thinking, Tim. I was thinking about what we're talking about with the phrase, and
Mhm.
because we got cannibals riding goats on Skagos. So here, Vargo Hoat is a goat who is feeding people. Well, he's fed his own self at the end. So yeah, I was just trying to remember if it was who was it that made so it was the Mountains Men. Okay.
Yeah. But what I was saying before I got interrupted by that spam call, was Roose Bolton's line about only the heart trees know what happens on Skagos. So Skagos having weirwood trees but being an island would imply that the weirwood roots, if the weirwoods on Skagos are to be connected to the rest of the weirwood net, then that would mean that their roots have to run under the ocean. So that point made about could there be children on
True.
Skagos,
Okay.
about do underground tunnels lead there? It's possible because subterranean roots flowing under the ocean from Skagos back to the mainland in the north to reconnect with the Weirwood net. In order to see what's happening on Skagos through the Weirwood net, you would need that connection.
So it's Willis who is
Mhm.
fed against his own will, but by who was my question. Who did it? I have to know this because it could be a parallel thing. I'm looking it up right now.
Mm. But what's important about that is that The Starks putting down the Skagosi rebellion and revoking their rights means that the Starks have taken away their rights to act. They are unable to access the Green Sea. So I think that's the point. Like, Skagos weirwood trees are current, and symbolically they are blocked from access to the Green Sea. And then we'll get into that more when we go into these princely parallels, and I'll talk more about House Magnar, because there's also green blood symbolism there as well.
Okay, cool. I can't find the answer real quick. They're saying it's the mountain, but
I mean, I have a mic? I have a mic right here. I upgrade it. Can we not hear me? Am I not coming in well?
you're coming in fine. They're just giving you a hard time. There's still a little bit of echo because it's a little bit far away from you, but people just complaining. I don't know. There it is. Literally matches your shirt too. That's very handsome. Yeah, Tim's fine. Yeah, Connor. It's cool. All right. Thank you for caring. Yes. Okay. So the Wyman Manderly's plan seems to be obviously to send Davos to get Rickon, because this is going to give him a way to supplant the bloody Boltons, because the Boltons are essentially posing as the lords of Winterfell now, on the premise that Ramsay has married Arya. Okay. And so I think Wyman probably knows it's not Arya. That's kind of an open secret. Like a lot of people suspect, it seems like Lady Dustin is implying, but no one's really saying it out loud. And again, Wyman is doing a mummer's farce. So me and Tim were talking about this, and we said, is it the case that Wyman wants to get Rickon and then supplant the Boltons, so he can be hand, essentially, or regent for a Rickon Lord of Winterfell / King in the North? Because I guess they've declared themselves independent. So he would be King in the North, and Wyman would be regent, and he would betroth maybe green-haired Willa or some other of his granddaughters to Rickon. And then, it's what the houses are always trying to do, right? Marry up.
Yeah.
But then we were talking about, well, is it more about just naked ambition for Manderly, or is it more of a case of wanting to set things right in the North? And the way to do that is to use Rickon. And this question comes down to, like, what's Wyman Manderly's reaction going to be if Jon turns up and robs Will?
Yeah, because while I did note that, and it's going to, so you wouldn't expect this from a Rickon stream, but there's going to be some slight House of the Dragon spoilers, because we are going to be talking about things that happened in the aftermath of the dance when we relate Bran and Rickon back to Aegon and Viserys, Daemon and Rhaenyra's youngest sons. And there is a point where Wyman Manderly is sort of, in his own way, playing this Unwin Peak role, which is interesting because the Peaks are the ones who drove the Manderlys out of the Reach. But at the end of the day, I don't think Wyman Manderly is going to be as conniving as Unwin Peak is, because Wyman Manderly is working with the information he has. He definitely wants a Stark restoration. But with the information he has, Robb is dead. He doesn't know what's up with Sansa and Arya. Even if he did, they're women, so, and they're pushing male primogeniture. Without knowing Bran's whereabouts, and only knowing from Wex Pike that Rickon is alive, that is his best choice. Again, given the information he has. He doesn't know about Robb's will or Jon coming back or anything like that. Rickon is like his best hope, knowing what he knows. So if Jon and Bran and Arya and Sansa return, is Wyman Manderly going to be angry that his choice Stark is no longer front and center, first in line? No, I don't think so. I think the whole point, though, is he's still going to have done good for bringing Rickon back. He's going to win. He may not get everything he wants, but he's going to get a lot because he's still serving a very important purpose.
Yeah, and I think he would be pro Jon Stark, Lord of Winterfell, because it was Jon Stark who built the Wolf's Den. And the Wolf's Den is where the Manderlys took up residence. So, it all comes around. But yeah, this is This is up for debate. Maybe we can make this another poll question. Is Wyman's priority the good of the North or the glory of his house? Which is more important to him? Is he a character that cares more about the good of the North, or is he a character that cares more about the good of his house? If it's more about his house, then he might be willing to pit Rickon and his claim against another Stark sibling. And if he's for the good of the North, then he would look to avoid that. And, so that, I think that's a good question.
Yeah.
Maynard James Plum. We talked about trying to do some more polls today, so there you go. Now Hero with 1,000 Voices. First of all, I don't speak Spanish, so I don't know what that means. But you had a good comment a minute ago. You pointed out that William Billy Bones Manderly is a character in Treasure Island. He's the pirate that gives the main character the treasure map. William Billy Bones Manderly. So here we have Wyman Manderly giving a map to Davos the pirate and sending him to get Rickon. That's pretty funny.
Oh, nice.
That's pretty funny.
Oh, there's just all kinds of kids' stories coming into this because now we can add Treasure Island to our Where the Wild Things Are and Billy Goat's Gruff.
I wonder if we could think more about, again, that story too and come up with anything else. So, look at this belief in Wyman Manderly. I love it. I think he's for the good of the North too. I kind of, somebody's got to be not a selfish MFer. You know what I mean?
That role's already taken by Littlefinger when he produces Sansa. He's perfectly willing to pit his Stark against the Stark siblings.
And at some point, it's like, we do need bad things to stop happening to the Starks. We need the Starks to like come together. There is foreshadowing for the Starks reunifying. Yeah. And so that's about where we are in the story at this point. At some point in Winds of Winter, we'll see movements in that direction. So, yeah.
The Stark sibling reunion should be a happy moment. There will be some kind of black storm cloud above it, but I don't want it to be from Wyman Manderly.
Here with 1,000 Voices says, Captain Flint is the original owner of the treasure. The entire North is littered with Treasure Island references. Cool. Well, we'll have to talk about that sometime. That's cool. Let's explain these. Oh, yeah. What will the Skagosi... Okay, so Davos is going to try to bring Rickon back. Mm-hmm. Now, if Rickon has become some sort of prince among the Skagosi, or whatever they call an honored warg child, they may not want to give him back. They may understand that this is leverage, as everybody in the story seems to, with like noble children, and they'll want concessions. So there's a couple things that could be obvious. One, they want to betroth somebody of House Magnar, perhaps, the daughter of House Magnar, to Rickon, so that she will be the next Lady of Winterfell. They've never married into House Stark that we know of, and so this would be a great honor and bring them, power and stuff, Skagosi representation. But the other thing that we were talking about is those naval rights.
Yeah. So this is your spoiler warning for House of the Dragon. So the parallel that I found in this relates back to Rickon playing the role of Viserys II. So if what we are told by George that King Bran is going to be our endgame, Bran the Broken, as the show had called him, we need to remember we already had our broken king, and that is Aegon III. Aegon III is known as the Broken King after the dance because of Bran is broken physically because of his paralyzed legs. Aegon III is broken mentally, the PTSD, the depression, everything that he saw and was made to suffer through during the dance. It is during the Battle of the Gullet that Prince Viserys is lost and presumed dead, just as Rickon is lost and presumed dead. Lo and behold, this is not the case. Prince Viserys is passed off through some Lyseni families, and he winds up in the care of House Rogaire, a Lyseni banking family. And he is married to the youngest daughter of House Rogaire, Lady Lara Rogaire. It is in the aftermath of the Dance of the Dragons that Unwin Peak sends out Alan Velaryon, Oakenfist. He's sent out to put down the raids of Dalton Greyjoy, because even after the war ends, Dalton Greyjoy is still causing trouble. In his efforts of doing this, Oakenfist bumbles his way into finding out that Viserys is alive, and he's able to secure Viserys coming back to King's Landing by making a deal with House Rogaire. The problem is, Oakenfist, even though he's set out as a representative of the crown, he's sort of in over his head. And what happens is he makes a very, very lopsided deal that heavily favors House Rogaire in securing Viserys' return. They pay a very high ransom. House Rogaire gets all these rights, banking rights, and the marriage to Lara Rogaire is not set aside. They recognize it. But it doesn't matter to Aegon III because he's so happy to have his brother back. Now, here we have the same situation. Davos is being sent to Skagos as a representative of King Stannis, as an envoy. But Davos he's one of the small folk. He's a risen lord. He's only recently learned how to read. So the idea that he's going to be able to make deals, wine and dine, all that, he's not built for this. He's a pirate at heart. So I think what's going to happen is when Davos reaches Skagos and he finds Rickon in the care of a Skagosi house, House Magnar seems like the most likely choice because they are the king's house. They're probably going to fleece him. Davos will probably get in over his head. And just like Oakenfist with House Rogaire, I think he's going to make a very lopsided deal that very much in the favor of the Skagosi to secure Rickon's return. Possibly a marriage pact, which would ruin Wyman Manderly's plans, but most of all, probably restoration of access to the sea.
Because that's huge. I mean, that's just a huge thing. Think about it. If you're in charge of the island of Skagos and you've been isolated from the sea for years, decades, if you could get that back for the people, oh my gosh, that's a whole different thing. So yeah, this makes a lot of sense. And just to go all the way back to what Tim was just saying, this is near the end of the Dance of the Dragons. This is Daemon and Rhaenyra's two children, Aegon and Viserys, the youngest two. Okay, because remember, Rhaenyra has the three older children with Laenor, Harwin. They're Harwin's kids. And then she's got the two younger ones with Daemon, and that's Aegon and Viserys. So at a certain point, they try to send Aegon and Viserys over to Essos, right, for safekeeping.
Mm-hmm.
And they run right into the fleet of the Triarchy.
Yeah, because originally Aegon and Viserys were supposed to go to Pentos to live with one of the Pentoshi princes, was going to put them up, but they get caught up in the Battle of the Gullet. Jace dies. Aegon has his flight on Stormcloud. That poor dragon takes crossbolts to the neck, but it gets him to safety. And that his one flight on his dragon is his only flight. And it's that harrowing journey. And Viserys is lost. And just for years, he's just presumed dead. And so I said,
and Viserys, one more detail. Viserys dressed up as a ship's page boy, a ship's boy or whatever. He swapped clothes with somebody, but somebody else told on him. So he tried to disguise himself, but yeah, he was captured. And Aegon felt guilty. He had the survivor's guilt and all that stuff. And brave little Stormcloud, got Aegon to safety, and that's it. So this is how Viserys was lost. And just want to go back in the chat. You can call Rhaenyra's kids bastards because they are, but don't call them pathetic because they're not. They're good kids, and they're all brave and itching to fly on their dragons and die like all the other real Targaryens. So you got to give them that.
And this is one of those cases. It's the thing that I'm usually always talking. If I'm not talking Lovecraft, I'm talking parallels, because George loves to make history rhyme. History doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme. And boy, oh boy, George loves making it rhyme.
Yeah. So you see how? Thank you. Somebody in the chat earlier. Rogue Air.
Hmm.
Viserys II is a rogue heir.
Heir. And Rickon is a rogue heir. He's a feral child, a feral
Yeah.
prince.
So shout out to whoever said that first in the chat. Nice job. Daniel Dibka. Thank you, Sean. Daniel Dibka, nice job. And so, yeah, rogue heirs. So you see what's going on here. The parallel would be Davos makes, a bad deal, quote unquote, but he brings the kid back.
Mhm.
And this would delight either. So who's the Aegon parallel? It could be, that's the
It would
thing
be
is,
Bran.
it could be Bran or it could be Jon. Because their Aegon Dragonsbane has certain parallels to Jon. He dresses all in black. He looks at the
Mhm.
stars a bunch, and he's kind of melancholy. So I have heard people say that that's a Jon foreshadowing because Jon will be king of the North or king of Winter at some point. But we also know that Bran's going to be the final king, quote unquote, at the end of the story. We don't know what exactly that'll mean, what Westeros's kingship will be like, but Bran is going to be some kind of king as well. So Rickon is the Viserys character being brought back, and I think I agree with you that it's Bran who will take heart from this. But it's hard to say. At some point, all the Starks, like we said, will seem to be reassembling at Winterfell, and
Mhm.
it's hard to say how it's all. I think Jon will be king in the North, like during the fight
Mhm.
against the others, and Bran will be named king of Westeros afterward. And Bran's also his role as king is also like a Weirwood king, Summer King, or some mythical stuff that goes with that. So I don't get too
Yeah.
lost, but yes,
Yeah. Aegon the Third is a very slept on king because it's why I'm hoping that, winds will come soon and that we can get Blood and Fire Part 2 because the Dragonbane's reign is going to be an interesting one.
yeah. I do see some people that still want to argue that Jon is not dead, but I'm pretty sure that he is dead. As if you review the scene, gets cut across the neck, and then the
Mhm.
blood is immediately welling under his fingers, which indicates that the jugular was cut. The jugular, there's not a lot of nerve endings in your neck, so
Mhm.
it tracks that he thought it was a shallow wound, but the gushing blood says that that's a jugular wound, and a jugular wound you bleed out so fast that he would begin to lose feeling in his hands, which is what happens as he's getting stabbed and he tries to go for his sword and he can't, and then like he doesn't even feel the fourth knife. He's already losing consciousness. To be losing consciousness that fast, it's consistent with a jugular wound. And he also needs to be resurrected. Like the show didn't make that up. They just did a dumb resurrection. Like the magical resurrection is going to be a lot more. So he does need to be dead, and he is dead, and he's not getting better. No, he's I got better. No, he's going to need magic. So also, then the Melisandre's foreshadowing skulls all around him, a man and then a wolf and then a man again. That's his death, the skulls, and he's going to go into ghost and have a second life and then be reborn into his body. So that all tracks with the death and resurrection scenario. But if I,
Yeah.
13
He's
years, got to argue about something. So I respect everyone's opinion. Maybe he's just unconscious. Tis blood a flesh wound. I say
he's
he's
dead.
dead,
He'll
but
get better. He'll get better.
he'll get better.
Um,
So
ha-
this is the Manderly plan. These are the parallels. And so, yeah, this is going to be interesting. So, yeah, Wyman's plans to marry his daughter to Rickon may already be spoiled.
mhm.
He may already be betrothed and obviously be only 6. So, can't have any
Mhm.
kids yet. But
Yeah, because it's possible. Like when we were talking about the Skagosi rebellion came to an end somehow, and we went looking. We were looking for any kind of Skagosi Stark marriage. The closest we found was Ned's great great grandmother, who is a woman of House Flint, one of the mountain clans. So either the Skagosi have never married into the Stark marriage before, in which case they'd be wanting one, or they have in the past and it's just not documented anywhere. But either way, the Skagosi family trying to marry into House Stark, the Lords Paramount of the North, would be a huge, huge win for them. And so that's why I said I very much feel that Davos is going to pull an oaken fist and make this sort of lopsided deal.
I think you might be able to push back and be like, you know what? You guys can have the naval rights and you can marry somebody else. But like, yeah, I'm gonna betroth my daughter with the green hair to Rickon. So that's just how it is. We'll see. This is part of the thing, though, is that it's fun to we mostly just have made jokes about Rickon leading an army of goat riding Skagosi cannibals and them riding onto the battlefield at some point and doing something cool. We're gonna go further than that today, and it starts with asking the question of what's going to happen once these Skagosi are roaming around Westeros. We talked about the parallel of Tyrion, bringing the mountain clans down from the Vale, the mountains in the Vale, right?
Yeah.
They are taken into a war, and Tyrion obviously he's a half man, so he's like a child man, kind of like Rickon, right? So becomes the leader of these mountain clans. They were like monsters. It's definitely a good parallel. And so they lead them down, and they go into battle. He fights for his family at the Battle of the Red Fork. Tyrion actually does pretty well at that battle, but then the mountain clans are sort of forgotten about, and they eventually bugger off to the Kingswood and take up residence in the Kingswood. So this is the kind of thing, like once you bring mountain clans, wildlings, quote unquote, into the civilized lands, like you kind of don't know what's going to happen. So this is something that we're gonna flesh out here. But I just want to get you guys thinking about this. Like, cool, it's all good to have an extra army in the middle of the battle, but then afterward, it's like, all right, so now we're having a meeting, and you remember the meeting that Tywin was having, and the mountain clans barge in, and they got weapons, and they're kind of threatening, and some of the other people in the tent are about to draw swords, and Tywin's like, chill. And he starts speaking like mountain clan to the mountain clans. He's like, you are great warriors, and all this and that. So yeah, we could see these dynamics here with the Skagosi, and they might get hungry, Tim. So,
because what we were talking about is we were discussing. It dawned on me. I'm like, this is probably one of the reasons why Wins is so late. Is we talked about everyone's heard of the Marinese knot. I don't think I have to explain that. But it seems like George created, in the process of Wins, George has created 2 more Gordian knots. And that is, in Dany's story, all these characters that need to converge on Dany. Tyrion, Victarion, Marwyn the Mage. And it seems like the same thing is happening in the north with the return of the Stark children, because Jon has to come down from the wall. Bran has to come back down from beyond the wall. Sansa has to come up north from the Vale. Rickon has to sail back from Skagos, and Arya is coming across from the Narrow Sea. So the question is, are they all going to converge in Winterfell, or will they meet up in another spot? Again, with Sansa being south in the Vale, is she going to make it all the way up to Winterfell, or will there be another meeting point? I suggested the Neck, because that would be the best opportunity for Howland Reed to show up and tell all the Stark kids at the same time everything they need to know. You're muted. Mute it.
thank you. So let's think about this, like what's about to happen. Winterfell is about to change hands. Okay, we've talked about that. We did a Winterfell Winds of Winter prediction, Battle of Ice, it was called, me and Quinn's ideas. But essentially what's going to happen is there's booby trapping of the lakes that are happening, and there's some chicanery with Stannis and the Manderlys and the Boltons. And long story short, it seems that Manderly's and Stannis's army will be in charge of Winterfell by the end of all this. Okay, and so this is all going to happen before Rickon shows up, because Davos has just been sent to Skagos near the end of Dance, towards the back half of it at least. So like, it's going to be a minute before they get back. The Battle of Winterfell is going to happen first. So then down in the south, we have a Red Wedding 2.0 being set up. And this is going to be the retaking of Riverrun. Riverrun is being held by Freys and Lannisters right now. And the Blackfish and Stoneheart and Thomas Sevens and all these people seem to be organizing movements to recapture the hostages from Riverrun. They're on the way to the Westerlands, but they're probably going to be retaken by the Blackfish. And family duty honor, Stoneheart is going to lead, the retaking of River Run, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So then we've got the wolf pack roaming around the same riverlands. It was Nymeria who pulled Stoneheart from the river when she was resurrected. So this is in the same area. And Arya is going to be coming back to Westeros and controls the wolves already. She's already leading the wolf pack as Nymeria at times in her dreams. So I think that the wolf pack will probably be involved with the River Run thing somewhere. Yeah. And then we've got Starks basically at River Run, and we've got Starks at Winterfell. And what's right in the middle? The Freys. The twins. And then we've also got, as you said, Howland Reed prowling around in the neck, waiting to surface. So you can see that this is shaping up to be the fall of House Frey, in fact. And I think at this point, we will have the Skagosi on hand. And so that brings us to our next childhood story. We'll do the symbolism of the phrase in a minute. Let's talk about the Billy Goat's Gruff. Tim, take it away.
So another children's tale. We have the 3 Billy Goats Gruff. 3 goat brothers want to cross a bridge guarded by a troll. They want to get across the bridge, go to the green pastures, the green meadow on the other side. But in order to get across, they first have to deal with this bridge troll. And we joke, but it's true. The Freys are bridge trolls. That's literally what they are. You got to pay the troll toll to cross the twins. So the first goat, the littlest brother, goes first. The troll comes out, threatens to eat him. He's like, no, I got a much bigger brother. Wait for him. He'll make a better meal. The greedy troll says, fine, I'll wait for your brother. Second goat comes forward. He's a medium-sized goat, a little older. Same thing happens. Tries to cross the bridge. Troll comes out. He says, no, I got a bigger brother. He's going to be a much, much better meal for you. Wait for him. Troll, greedy but hungry, decides, okay, fine, I'll wait for the bigger brother. Finally, the third goat shows up, and this one is so big and so heavy that he causes the bridge to rattle when he starts crossing it. Troll comes up, makes the same threat. This goat's like, nah, son, and just headbutts him off of the bridge into the river, and the troll drowns in the river that he was guarding, while the goat reunites with his brothers in the meadow on the other side.
So there you go. He said, no. He said, no. Hell no. And he headbutted that troll right in the river. Now, as you said, Walder Frey is a bit of a bridge troll, as we know. They extort. They're supposed to be bannermen to the north, but they still got to negotiate as if they're not. Like, they're dicks. We know this. There is famously a foreshadowing of... So, okay. Again, the goats throw the troll into the river. So the parallel here could be the idea of Freys being thrown into their river as their castle is destroyed. And perhaps it will be the goat riding Skagosi who has something to do with this. Because Rickon and his wolf, they have foreshadowing scenes with the Freys, big and little Walder, in the Godswood that we're about to read, that I think might indicate Rickon having something to do with the fall of the Lord of the Crossing. Remember, they're playing Lord of the Crossing and trying to push each other into the water, right? So consider the idea of this parallel essentially being Rickon and the Billy Goat army coming down to the Freys and being part of their downfall. Now let's read the foreshadowing for Walder Frey being thrown into a body of water of some kind. Tim, take it away.
Right. I consent.
This isn't the right quote. Sorry.
The Mystery Night? Yeah.
It's at the bottom.
Yeah, this is from the Mystery Night, Dunk and Egg. Lord Frey's son was so taken by their antics that he joined in, pummeling the wedding guests with a bladder borrowed from a dwarf. The child had the most irritating laugh Dunk had ever heard, a high, shrill hiccup of a laugh that made him want to take the boy over a knee or throw him down a well. If he hits me with that bladder, I may do it. So the idea of Walder Frey drowning is an inside joke 90 years in the making, going all the way back to the Second Blackfire Rebellion.
So just to be clear, that is Walder Frey as a child in the Dunk and Eggs. He's that old that he was a kid during the Dunk and Egg stories. And here he is at the wedding feast acting like a little jerk. And we've got the shrill laugh. That's mentioned in the story, Walder Frey's little laugh. So, yeah. So this is George basically putting a dig in at Walder, but also, throwing him down a well. Okay, now we're get ready to go there, Tim. So, throwing into the river is not exactly the same as throwing down the well. However, it is being drowned. So, if again, thinking about the Billy Goats thing, if Walder is the bridge troll, somebody's got to throw him into the river. And so here we've got foreshadowing of Walder getting thrown into a well. Now, as we have discussed, when we talk about crossings and the crossing in a mystical sense, we're talking about the border between life and death, the border between the Greenlands and the North, which is the wall. We're talking about the veil of tears. Remember, the wall parallels the idea of a veil of tears because the wall weeps. So it's like frozen tears, and the dead, everything is dead on one side, and the Greenlands, or everything's alive on the other side. The veil of tears is a metaphor for the curtain of life and death. So you guys know that. So with the crossing, this is all psychopomp stuff. Like, so at the wall, we have the Black Gate. The Black Gate it mediates the crossing. You have to say the words in order to get through. It's just like playing Lord of the Crossing game. You got to say the right words. You got to appease the Lord of the Crossing in order to get through. So this is an old sort of fairy folklore thing that George is playing with here. The idea with the wall, okay, if you remember, somebody smart a long time ago figured out that Hodor, the fact that Hodor's real name is Walder, just like Walder Frey, his real name is Walder, and that this is a pun and a clue about the door that Hodor is going to hold, because Hodor is Hodor. Remember, when the show showed him saying, hold a door, hold a door, hold a door, and then it gets contracted into Hodor. And we know that is from the books. Hodor is going to hold the door in the books in some way. We don't know which door, but it's going to be a door, and he's going to hold it, and that's where his name comes from. So if Hodor is like a pun on hold the door, then what does Walder mean? Well, it means wall door. And there is a door in the wall. It's the Black Gate. So we, us myth heads, if you will, collectively, this has been a headcanon for a long time, that Hodor is going to hold the door at the Black Gate somehow. And then, Tim, you had a sort of a brainwave when I was talking to you about this earlier today.
Yeah, because when Bran, Hodor, and the Reeds go north of the wall, when they go through the Black Gate, it's Samwell Tarly, who lets them through, because only a brother of the Night's Watch can open the Black Gate. But Sam doesn't go north with them. So when Bran and co have to come back south without a Night's Watch member, because I don't think Cold Hands counts for this anymore,
He told Sam how to say the words. It's Sam who went through. Cold Hands is dead. He can't go through. Exactly right.
So how do they get through the Black Gate without a Night's Watch member with them? And that made me think, maybe hold the door means like Hodor is going to physically have to pry open the Black Gate, and it might chomp down on him.
It's gonna be like Samson. That's why he's so strong. He's gonna hold that thing open, and they're gonna go through the mouth, and then he's gonna have to shut it so the whites can't get through. So he's gonna end up getting eaten by the Black Gate. But that makes sense because his mind has already been eaten by the Weirwood net.
Yeah.
Kind of. It's been eaten by Bran, if you will, in a way. So it's like a wolf for the Weirwood net. But yeah, this is Tim's specific idea about how he's going to hold the door. He's going to pry open that Black Gate and hold it open. So
yeah,
that's
a sacrificial doorstop is what's going to happen to Hodor, unfortunately.
That kind of makes a lot of sense. So there you go, guys. I said we're going to have a new Hodor wins prediction. So there's a refined theory there. Yes. But the point is, there's all this stuff about the crossing, right? This is the crossing point.
Mhm.
Okay. Hodor, aka Walder, is both the Lord of the Crossing and dying at the crossing. And where is the Black Gate? It's down a well.
Mhm.
So when we talk about Walder Frey and the foreshadowing of him being thrown down a well, well, he's
Mhm.
probably going to be thrown in the river because that's what's there. Maybe there's a well somewhere at the Twins. They'll throw him down, perhaps. I mean, I guess they would have a well somewhere, but more likely he'll be thrown in the river. But this is all paralleling Hodor at the Night Fort, where there is a well, and that Walder is going to be down the well holding the door. So you can see how all, like, George is taking the same idea and playing it out potentially in multiple situations.
Mhm.
So yeah, Walder. I think that is another potential thing that lines up with the idea of Walder being thrown into the water at the crossing, at the place of the crossing.
And if you needed more confirmation, don't worry, there's more. There's more to this. We already know it's heavily implied that Freys are going to drown in the Battle of Ice. Now, someone in chat pointed out, I'm sorry I didn't catch it, but they point out, like, we seem to have all these northern factions bringing wildlings or wildling adjacent people. John's got the free folk on his side. Stannis is campaigning in the north and it's got the mountain clans. Now we're bringing in Rickon coming back with the Skagosi, and then Sansa coming up with the Knights of the Vale. All of these, which, and the Vale has mountain clans too. So what's happening is that Stannis's men have been drilling holes into the ice.
It was
They are
Tina. Shout out to Tina. Go ahead.
they are waiting in the they are holed up in the Crofters village, waiting on the Bolton, Frey, Manderly army. But what's going to happen is when they get there, the Manderlys are going to turn cloak, turn against the Frey and Boltons, and what's most likely going to happen is these holes that they've been poking in the ice are going to cause the lake to crack. And we're probably going to see a lot of Boltons and a lot of Freys drowning in a frozen lake. So you take that idea and then just push it down into the Riverlands. Red Wedding 2.0. Rickon possibly leading Skagosi and Skagosi unicorns down, but also Lady Stoneheart and the Brotherhood Without Banners. Remember, after Catelyn Stark is killed, the Freys throw her body into the river in a mockery of Tully funeral rites. So Walder Frey being thrown into the river is becomes an irony to that.
Very fitting. Yeah.
Then, oh, and there's more because we didn't even touch upon the phrase other symbolism.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So the phrase, the river that their bridge crosses is part of the Green Fork. So huge shout out to Hero with 1,000 Voices. Got to say, I loved your use of voices last stream, and I love your use of analogy. And he got me thinking more about this whole idea of the astral turnpike, and sort of like the forks of the trident are like the three highways you get onto the astral turnpike. You got your blue highway, which is others and ice magic, your red highway, fire and dragons, and your green highway, which is nature and green seer magic. The Freys, they sit on the green fork, so they are others through their symbol, blue on white, and bridge trolls. They are other figures that block entry to the green road, to the astral turnpike. So Walder Frey falling into the green fork is an other drowning in the green sea.
So it's almost like returning the other to the Green Sea. Because, in case you haven't heard, my big theory about
Mhm.
the White Walkers, and this is shared by some other people in various forms, is that they are exiled green men or weirwood spirits, and that the ultimate answer to the problem of the White Walkers involves putting them back in the weirwood trees. So we got to get the human green seer hive mind out of there. Brand's going to do a download. Then it's empty. We could put the White Walkers back in, and then the trees won't be so pissed. White Walkers won't be pissed. They won't be walking around and stealing children. And
I can also, this might make you happy, I can also tack on some moon meteor symbolism to Walder Frey falling in the river.
1 second, just can you remember it if you put a pin in it? Okay. And so
Yep.
this idea, I want to explain to people why I just told them that, essentially. So the idea is that anytime we find a parallel for the others, we have to look at how they meet their end. Usually their death will give us some clue about going back into the weirwood net or something like that, or sometimes it will. And so for example, the mountain clans are a great example. They are other coded, and Tyrion leads them down out of these cold mountains of the moon, which is all other symbolism, and they fight at the Battle of the Red Fork. Then they go live in the Kingswood. So going to live in the Kingswood is like giving the others the trees back. They're going to live back in the trees, right? So when we're talking about the Freys, if they're others, and this is where the Freya symbolism comes in. As many people know, the Norse fertility gods are a brother and sister pair, Freyr and Freya. Freyr and Freya. Sorry, I don't know how the J is. I think it's just a Freya. But in any case, it's spelled Freyr and Frejya, I believe it is. Mm-hmm. And they're associated with many things, but fertility and fecundity and the fertility of the harvest and sex rights and things like that. That's mostly what they are associated with. Thank you. Freyr and Froya or Freya. There's a few different spellings. Thank you. Froya. Okay, pronounced Froya. So when we have Walder Frey, and he's the most fertile dude in Westeros, they even say he could field an army out of his trousers, Catelyn says. So this is literally a man known for his fertility. So obviously there's some sort of inspiration there. I looked in the myth of those North gods. I did not find much else that correlates to them, except for just it gives the phrase their symbolism. Okay, because this is a fertility. Freya and Freyr are very. They're pretty typical nature fertility gods. Almost every culture has one. Usually the idea is that they will be associated both with human reproduction and the fecundity of the fields. This and this is with like Garth the Green mythology. Same thing. He makes the women pregnant and he makes the fields ripen. It's a little crass, but it's just fertility folklore. And so the point is that House Frey has this fertility folklore, but then they also have the others symbolism. That's because the others used to be green men, and that's a video that I'll make soon. But essentially, like I said, the others, their origin is some kind of green men or green seer spirits, children of the forest, green seers. I'm not sure what the delineation is there, but that's the point. And so this is what we're seeing here. We're seeing these otherized green men, and they are blocking access to the Green Fork. They have set up shop there, and they are blocking the river, if you will. And they are eating people that go through, in the sense that they are extorting from them. But if you go over to the parallel at the Night Fort, the Weirwood Gate literally does eat people, just like the bridge trolls always eat people that go under the bridge. So you go under the wall, you have to get eaten by the Weirwood troll. Okay? Mm-hmm. So there's all this parallel stuff. So we go back to the other symbolism of, I need to scroll up, of the phrase. So they got the blue and the coloring, the blue and white, blue and silver. We got the divided weirwood net symbolism. And so I guess throwing them back in the river is kind of like putting the others back into the Green Sea. All this stuff about going into the river, especially the Green Fork. Okay, mm-hmm. That's like going back into the Green Sea of the Weirwood Net, where the Green Seers swim. So that just makes a lot of sense. A drowning death for Walder Frey or other Freys would completely line up, in other words, with what we think should happen to the others. Going back into the Green Sea, back into the trees, some version of that. Your thoughts? And then you can do the moon meteor symbolism, please.
Oh, yeah. Like everything, it just, it tacks on so much. And yeah, because Walder Frey is an otherized character as the bridge troll, as all of this. And again, like the mockery he's made and all that. And Cat even says, like, I hope you live to be 100. Like, this is the oldest guy out there, right? And then what I want to get at with the moon meteor symbolism is is also the fact that he travels in a palanquin. And something I've noticed is like palanquins seem to be like meteor stand-ins. And we see this a couple times. The people in Ashai are carried around in palanquins. Doran Martell, when he leaves the Water Gardens after the blood oranges have been dropped, plopping down on the ground, he is taken back to Sunspear in a palanquin.
Can I just interrupt you real quick? I think that is like the barks of Egyptian mythology. There's a solar bark, there's a lunar bark. I think the palanquin just means floating in the sky. So it can be any astronomical. Like Doran Martell is a solar figure. Mm-hmm. He's on a palanquin. But then you've got the white pearl, that the god emperor, that sounds more like a moon. So I think that just means floating, but go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, because the god on Earth ascending to the stars in his pearl palanquin sounds like a spaceship taking off. Now, Walder Frey is carried in a palanquin because he's old. He's 91, going on 92. He has gout. So when Walder Frey
they're killing us, Tim. Palanquin.
Okay. But so what I'm getting at is it might not just be Walder. If it's not just Walder Frey being pushed into the river, but possibly his palanquin being tipped into the river, then that symbolically, his palanquin being tipped into the Green Fork symbolically would represent a meteor landing in the Green Sea. That's the moon meteor connection.
Definitely, and that's the ones we're going to get at the end of the story is icy moon meteors, I believe. So that kind of would figure. And also, yeah, there's a lot of symbolism with overthrowing the palanquin because it's like the Green Sea or bed. You know, it's there's a lot of things with that. So cool. And so let's see here. So I think that's going to give, oh yeah, I also had this other quote about the horned moon. When Robb crosses through originally and makes that marriage pact, it says they crossed at evenfall as a horned moon floated upon the river. The double column wound its way through the gates of the eastern twin like a great steel snake, slithering across the courtyard into the keep and over the bridge to issue forth once more from the second castle on the west bank. Catelyn rode at the head of the serpent, with her son and her uncle Sir Brynden and Sir Stevern Frey. Behind followed 9/10 of their horses, blah, 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 blah. Afterwards, she would remember the sight of Lord Walder Frey and his litter, watching them pass, the glitter of his eyes peering down through the slats of the murder holes. Oh, the glitter of eyes peering down through the slats of the murder holes in the ceiling. So those were the stars looking down symbolism that went with Walder on his litter, which is the palanquin. So it's definitely got some astronomy going on, as well as the reference to the horned moon. So I was wondering, horned moon is generally a sacrifice symbol. We see that George using that in Bran's last chapter, where it says the moon was as thin and sharp as the blade of a knife. So this is the crescent moon. And then we also see the crescent sickle in Bran's dream cutting somebody's throat. So George is showing us the classic, folkloric association between a sickle moon and various kinds of human and blood and animal sacrifice. But I wondered, Tim, since I'm talking about horny goat Skagosi coming down to the twins to take revenge for the murder of Robb and the Red Wedding, in part, maybe this horned moon is talking about horny goats.
Yeah, possibly. Because we've been talking about, the idea that Rickon's going to live. And, again, there's always the idea that Rickon's story is going to come to nothing because of the name Shaggydog and the implication of the Shaggydog story. I don't see that happening. I think Rickon's going to be a lot more important. That's not to say that he's going to live until the end, but I don't see him coming back just to die. Something's going to happen. And him leading a procession of Skagosi down to the Riverlands to avenge his mother's death. And not only that, but his mother being there. And Arya possibly plying in. I don't think what Walder Frey's death is going to come like it did in the show. I see Arya having a plot to play, especially with the wolf pack out there. But Rickon also coming back. Again, the baby of the family wanting his mother. And Robb even saying, when Catelyn was spending all those days when Bran was in his coma and Robb comes to her, Rickon needs you too. Remind her, you have other kids. I got a 3-year. I'm trying to be Lord of Winterfell, and I got a 3-year-old clinging to my leg. He needs you. I need you.
Perfect segue, Tim, because this is a quote that we have about how Rickon is after Robb leaves. So what I'd like to do is take a 30-second restroom break for us, Tim, with some music, and then we'll come back and read a couple of these quotes from the text. That'll be the conclusion of our stream. But as we read these scenes, which are fairly chunky here, we'll be looking for foreshadowing for all the stuff that we just talked about, which is why we did that first. So give us 30 to 45 seconds. Enjoy the music. Tim, you feel free to get a refreshment, and we'll be right back. And yeah, let's see. Source. We'll do the Hightower. And I'm back. Well, I'm back. Hi.
I'm coming.
Take your time, Tim. We can hear you poking around. I was trying to solo my camera, but apparently I don't know how to do that.
I needed to take the time to wash my hands.
Good man. I also did that, of course. I just grabbed a drink, actually. And eye drops. My eyes were getting dry. That was the real reason for that break. I was like, okay. But good job. We love a clean king. Yeah, Tim's certified. He's take home to mom material here. So, alrighty. Let's see here. Please make it so Robb won't go away. He prayed softly, and this is Bran in the Godswood. He moved his hand through the cold water, sending ripples across the pool. Please make him stay, or if he has to go, bring him home safe with mother and father and the girls, and make it so Rickon understands. His baby brother had been wild as a winter storm since he learned Robb was riding off to war, weeping and angry by turns. He'd refused to eat, cried and screamed for most of a night, even punched old Nan when she was trying to sing him to sleep, and the next day he'd vanished. So, this is all seems like story in miniature here a little bit, right? Like punching old Nan. Well, old Nan got carried off to the Dreadfort, so there was a rift there. Obviously, it wasn't Rickon that, but like he's not around old Nan anymore, and then he does vanish. That's exactly what happens. Robb had set half the castle searching for him, and when at last they'd found him down in the crypts, Rickon had slashed at them with a rusted iron sword he'd snatched from a dead king's hand, and Shaggydog had come slavering out of the darkness like a green-eyed demon. The wolf was near wild as Rickon. He'd bitten Gage on the arm, etc., etc. Farland had the black wolf chained up in the kennels, and Rickon cried all the more for being without him. So, first of all, you got more solicitors there?
Damon just tried to knock down the microphone.
Oh, shame on you, Damon. And so what we've got here is essentially what's happening. This is Rickon, King of Winter, right? He's grabbed a King of Winter sword, and he's defending the crypts. He's living in the crypts like a King of Winter, wielding a sword. He's got a dire wolf, and he's giving out hell. He's fighting with a demon. This is this is potentially foreshadowing for Rickon becoming a king of winter or a king of House Stark. This is where we go back to Tim's incredible parallel with Aegon the Third and Viserys, okay? Because if you go down in history, here's what happens. Aegon the Third, the broken king, he has 2 kids. Daeron the young dragon who tried to conquer Dorne and died young. And then his brother Baelor the Blessed, aka Baelor the Befuddled, became king. And Baelor had no children either. And so it was actually the kingship went back up the line to Viserys, Aegon's brother. And Viserys became king and his children after him. And it was Viserys' line which led to the future line of House Targaryen. So if we're paralleling that, Jon or Bran, depending on who Aegon III parallels, will be king, but it might be Rickon's line that leads to House Stark. Because, by the way, neither Bran nor Jon can have kids because Jon's a zombie, so he probably won't be able to have kids, almost certainly. And Bran supposedly can't either because of where he was paralyzed. And so it could well be that Rickon eventually becomes king and his children continue the line of House Stark. Totally possible. Go ahead.
Yeah, and that's why I think that the idea that Rickon's story is a Shaggydog story, I think that's a bluff, because I think, like, no, Rickon, it might be actually Rickon who has to continue the Stark line because of Bran's injury, his paralysis, and I don't know. I'm not sure about Jon. I think Jerry's out on whether he can procreate, how much. But yeah, one would think that dying and coming back, maybe that's the seed dies with him. I'm not sure, but yeah, I do think that it is very possible that House Stark will have to descend on through the line of Rickon. And yeah, so the Shaggy Dog story may actually be a cover up for, like, no, this is actually going to be our progenitor, our most long-lived Stark of them all. You're muted. Mute it.
Like we said, if it parallels, we don't know how far the parallel goes, but it is Viserys' line that continues the house. So I think that's a pretty good evidence. And then you're like, oh yeah, well, Bran and Jon probably can't have kids. So that does make sense. Obviously, it could continue through Sansa or Arya. But if it's going to be through a male, it would have to be Rickon. And let's see. This is going to be a Game of Thrones. Okay. All right, we'll do a little switching off with the reading here, Tim. Can you see it well enough?
I actually have mine open to the next one of the Lord of the Crossing game. So how about you handle this one, and I can take up the Lord of the Crossing.
Okay. Well, we'll probably both need to work on that. It's a pretty long section, but Bran could not recall the last time he'd been in the crypts. It had been before, for certain. When he was little, he used to play down here with Rob and Jon and his sisters. And this is after he's had the dream of his father being dead, and he told Maester Luwin, and Maester Luwin's like, nah, that's not the case. You want to go down there and check it out, and so they're going down. And Osha's carrying him because Hodor won't go down. So when he was little, he used to play down here with Rob and Jon and his sisters. He wished they were here now. The vault might not have seemed so dark and scary. Summer stalked out into the echoing gloom, then stopped, lifted his head, and sniffed the chill dark and bared his teeth. Let me move this thing out of the way here. And crept backward, eyes glowing golden in the light of the maester's torch. Even Osha, hard as old iron, seemed uncomfortable. Grim folk by the look of them, she said, as she eyed the long row of granite Starks on their stone kings. They were the kings of winter, Bran whispered. Somehow it felt wrong to talk too loudly in this place, unless you're Robert Baratheon, by the way. Osha smiled. Winter's got no king. If you'd seen it, you'd know that, summer boy. But actually, let me pause on that. This really is like, when it's not somebody as arrogant as Robert, most people come into a place like this and feel the solemnness and the sanctity of the environment. And it just sort of highlights like how out of touch with his environment Robert is. That he would come down here laughing and boasting and making jests and never even slow down to like absorb like what's going on. So I just think Martin is sort of showing us like different people pick up on it. It's just interesting. So Winter's Got No King. If you'd seen it, you'd know that, Summer Boy. They were kings in the north for thousands of years, Maester Lewin said, lifting the torch high so that the light shone on the stone faces. Oh, I've got my mouse in the wrong place. Sorry. Some were hairy and bearded, shaggy men, fierce as the wolves that crouched by their feet. Others were shaved clean, their features gaunt and sharp-edged as the iron longswords across their laps. And of course, the Starks and the others probably are related in some way. And so this does seem to be like, yeah, some of the kings of winter are others, and some of them are Starks. They both are kings of winter in different ways. The Starks have triumphed over the others at times, which makes them the king of winter. But who's the king of winter? It's the friggin' Night King. It's whoever leads the others, obviously. So, yeah, hard men for a hard time. Come. He strode briskly down the vault, past the procession of stone pillars and the endless carved figures. A tongue of flame trailed backward from the upraised torch as he went. The vault was cavernous, longer than Winterfell itself, and Jon had told him once that there were older levels underneath, vaults even deeper and darker, where the older kings were buried. So again, you forget how big they are. It would not do to lose the light. Summer refused to move from the steps, even when Osha followed the torch, Bran in her arms. Do you recall your history? And they talked about some of these kings. That one is Jon Stark. When the Sea Raiders landed in the east, he drove them out and built the castle at White Harbor. I mentioned that earlier. His son was Rickard Stark, not my father's father, but another Rickard. He took the neck away from the Marsh King and married his daughter. Tim, a previous Rickard Stark took an army down into the neck.
Yep. Rickard going south Rickon leading an army south seems more likely with that one.
He's gonna kill the Lord of the Crossing and maybe marry one of his daughters. Who knows? Very cool. Yet more foreshadowing. I knew we would find it. Theon Stark's the real thin one with the long hair and the skinny beard. Theon, of course, is very thin. He turns emaciated. They call him the Hungry Wolf because he was always at war. That's a Brandon, the tall one with the dreamy face. He was Brandon the shipwright because he loved the sea. That's Bloodraven. His tomb is empty. Bloodraven, of course, Brynden. And then it says he tried to sail west across the Sunset Sea and was never seen again. Bloodraven will disappear into the Weirwood Net and never be seen again. He went north of the wall and was never seen again. Okay. Mm-hmm. His son was Brandon the Burner because he put the torch to all his father's ships in grief. That's Bran. Bran is going to shut down the same Weirwood Net that Bloodraven disappeared into. So you've got Brandon the shipwright with the dreamy face disappearing into the sea, and then Brandon the Burner burning the ships. Well, we know the ships are a metaphor for the Weirwoods, going back to the Grey King and his Weirwood boat, because that's how the Green Seers sail the Green Sea. Their ships are the Weirwood trees. So Brandon the Burner, that's Bran. That's our Bran, because he's going to shut down the Weirwood Net. So this is one of my favorite things. Once I had that shut down the Weirwood Net thing, and I found this, I was like, oh yeah, because that's Brynden Rivers. He's the one that disappears into the sea. So Roderick Stark, who won Bear Island in a wrestling match and gave it to the Mormonts, and that's Torrhen Stark, the king who knelt. We know his story. And oh, my screen is stuck. Hang on. Let's see. Then there's Cregan Stark. He fought with Prince Aemon the Dragon Knight. Blah, blah, blah. They were almost at the end. Bran felt a sadness creeping over him. And there's my grandfather, Lord Rickard, who was beheaded by Mad King Aerys. His daughter, Lyanna, and you can see Bran got the sanitized story here. His daughter, Lyanna, and his son, Brandon. Not me. That's another Brandon, my father's brother. The Maid's a Fair One. Blah, 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 blah. I'm skipping ahead to some Robert Rhaegar stuff. Lord Eddard's tomb, for when his time comes, Maester Lewin said. Is this where you saw your father in your dream, Bran? Yes. The memory made him shiver. He looked around the vault uneasily, the hairs on the back of his neck bristling. Had he heard a noise? Was there someone here? Maester Lewin stepped toward the open sepulchre, torch in hand. As you see, he's not here. nor will he be for many a year. Dreams are only dreams, child. He thrust his arm into the blackness inside the tomb, as into the mouth of some great beast. Do you see? It's quite... The darkness sprang at him, snarling. Bran saw eyes like green fire, a flash of teeth, fur as black as the pit around them. Maester Luwin yelled and threw up his hands. The torch went flying from his fingers, caromed off the stone face of Brandon Stark, and tumbled up the statue's feet, the flames licking up his legs. In the drunken, shifting torchlight, they saw Luwin struggling with the direwolf, beating at his muzzle with one hand while the jaws closed on the other. Summer, Bran screamed. So I'll pause here real quick. Yeah, that's a little bit of Tyr sticking his arm in Fenrir. Sure. Yeah, that's cool. And obviously the darkness is like a beast, and then Shaggydog literally is a black beast that jumps out of the darkness. So we can see that once again, Rickon and Shaggydog are like the embodiment of the Stark Kings of Winter. They are the defenders of the crypts. They live in there as if they were dead Kings of Winter, and they jump out like the darkness given form. So,
Yeah.
Go
Underworld.
ahead.
Yeah, they're awesome. Him being in the crypts is an underworld king and with a hellhound. It's all right there. Summer, Bran screamed, and summer came, shooting from the dimness. A summer came, shooting from the dimness behind them, because after the long night, the sun must rise. He slammed into Shaggydog and knocked him back, and the two direwolves rolled over and over in a tangle of gray and black fur, snapping and biting at each other, while Maester Luwin struggled to his knees, his arm torn and bloody. Osha propped Bran up against Lord Rickard's stone wolf as he hurried to assist the Maester. In the light of the guttering torch, shadow wolves, 20 feet tall, fought on the wall and roof.
And so here we have a reference to Simeon Star Eyes watching the Hellhounds fight at the wall. Here we have these Hellhounds, because they're literally down in the crypts where Cerberus lives. So this is the Hellhound symbolism of the Starks, very much called to the front here, down in the crypts. And they are fighting on the wall. The Shadow Wolves is even another Hellhound. It's like a dead beast, and a reanimated beast, something like that. And we got to hear the Shadow Wolves fighting. So I think Simeon, if we're talking about Simeon Star Eyes, that seems to be something about the last hero and the others fighting in the Weirwood Net or something. I don't really want to get lost on that. I just want to sort of point at it and say there's the reference. But the main thing is Rickon and Shaggy and their embodiment of this as these dead Kings of Winter that are coming out of the darkness. And yeah, as you point out, Tim, gray and black, but the gray wolf is named Summer. So this is very much a light and dark sort of cycle of the seasons wrestling here that's going on.
And then also Maester Luwin, his arm torn and bloody, so that's like some broken arm imagery. So you can think like broken arm of Dorne.
Yeah, right at the time of the long night. And then of course there is the torch falling against the legs of Brandon. Of course, it was actually Rickard who was cooked in his armor right in front of Brandon. But Bran loses his legs, and so the statue's legs are being burned. And that also ties back to Brandon the Burner that we just talked about, who is a parallel to Bran. So there's some other symbolism happening there. But let's see how much more we want to read here. So, Shaggy, a small voice called. When Bran looked up, his little brother was standing in the mouth of Father's tomb. With one final snap at Summer's face, Shaggydog broke off and bounded to Rickon's side. You let my father be, Rickon warned Luwin. You let him be. Rickon, Bran said softly. Father's not here. Yes, he is. I saw him. Tears glistened on Rickon's face. I saw him last night. So let's see. I don't think he says anything about the crow. In your dream? Rickon nodded. You leave him. You leave him. He's coming home now, like he promised. He's coming home. So, like he promised. Okay, well, I guess he promised before he left. So, we don't know. So as far as like, did Bloodraven send him the dream? There's not really a hint about it there. We don't know where the dream came from. But
no,
he's 4, so whatever. I don't think we need to keep. It does talk about
Uh,
him being chained up. I let him loose. He doesn't like
I let him loose.
chains.
Yeah, so that's probably more imagery of Rickon leading army, let loose the dogs of war. If we want to throw in a Road Warrior reference.
There you go. Well, you see, yeah, it fits with his personality. He's all fight,
Yeah. We live, we die, we live again.
Let's see. I'm just skimming through this here to see if they're going up to the turret now. They do see the comet. And then they get the raven with the letter. Lewin's doing more magic denialism. And then the raven comes with the bloody wing. And yeah. And they said they're talking about the children of the forest. And Bran is like, yeah, this and that, magic. And Lewin's like, yeah, I wish they were here now. They could hear me. They could heal my arm with a spell, and they could talk to Shaggydog and tell him not to bite. He gave the big black wolf an angry glance. Yeah, I mean, I would too if I got bitten. Take a lesson, Bran. The man who trusts in spells is dueling with a glass sword, as the children did. Here, let me show you something. And let's see, the arrowheads. Yeah, the dragon glass. Obsidian. Whoa, what happened?
Dalton, the Red Kraken happened.
Red Kraken strikes again.
Damn it, Dalton.
That's cool. And Osha pipes in, oh, they still do. The children of the forest still do carry blades of dragon glass. And Tim, are you okay, buddy?
You're
not hurt, are you?
No, I'm good.
Okay. So make sure.
I think I'm gonna have to call back in.
Oh, really?
I think it looks like it froze on my end.
Oh, yeah. Yes, it did. Okay, I was thinking that you hadn't picked up your computer in all this time. That's why I was like, are you hurt? Can you move? All right. Well, we're bad. The Eyes of Night's Queen are back with us once again. And, all right. The Red Kraken, well named. Lord of Chaos. All right, there we go. And Tim is back.
The stream is gold.
This is a pretty good stream. Honestly, this is going really well. So I think this is about all we need to read. The other one, this is really the payoff one, is where they're playing Lord of the Crossing. They're just talking about the children a bunch, and this is a big info dump on the Arm of Dorne and the First Men's battles with the children and all that stuff. And then they get the letter. So let me flip back over to the notes. The next one starts with this quote, which I'll highlight. It's in A Clash of Kings. So we'll just go back to Clash of Kings real quick here. See what we can find in this quote. I didn't even read the whole thing through, so I'm not sure what we're going to find. This will be exciting. So he is telling Maester Lewin that he can get to bed himself, and he says, anyway, I don't have to sleep if I don't want to. Do you want to do Bran and I'll do Lewin, or do you just want to do a couple paragraphs and switch? Let's just do that. That'll be easier. Let's see.
Do dead men dream?
Anyway, yeah, all men must sleep, Bran, even princes. When I sleep, I turn into a wolf. Bran turned his face away and looked back out into the night. Do wolves dream? All creatures dream, I think, yet not as men do. Do dead men dream? Bran asked, thinking of his father. In the dark crypts below Winterfell, a stonemason was chiseling out his father's likeness in granite. Some say yes, some say no, the maester answered. The dead themselves are silent on the matter. Do trees dream? Trees? No. They do, Bran said with sudden certainty. They dream tree dreams. I dream of a tree sometimes. A weirwood like the one in the Godswood. It calls to me. The wolf dreams are better. I smell things, and sometimes I can taste the blood. Maester Lewin tugged at his chain where it chafed his neck. If you would only spend time with the other children. I hate the other children, Bran said, meaning the Walders. I commanded you to send them away. The Freys are your lady mother's wards, sent here to be fostered at her express command. It is not for you to expel them, nor is it kind. If we turned them out, where would they go? Home. It's their fault you won't let me have summer. The Frey boy did not ask to be attacked, the maester said. No more than I did. That was Shaggydog. Rickon's big black wolf was so wild he even frightened Bran at times. Summer never bit anyone. Summer ripped out a man's throat in this very chamber, or have you forgotten? Truth is, those sweet pups you and your brothers found in the snow have grown into dangerous beasts. The Frey boys are wise to be wary of them. We should put the Walders in the Godswood. They could play Lord of the Crossing all they want, and Summer could sleep with me again. If I'm the prince, why won't you heed me? I want to ride Dancer, but Alebelly wouldn't let me pass the gate. And rightly so. The Wolf's Wood is full of danger. Your last ride should have taught you that. Would you want some outlaw to take you captive and sell you to the Lannisters? So here it occurs to me, Tim, that Walder Frey took Robb captive and sold him to the Lannisters.
Ooh.
So when they say the Wolf's Wood is full of danger, and then he says, Summer would save me, Bran insisted stubbornly. Princes should be allowed to sail the sea and hunt boar in the Wolf's Wood and joust with lances. So it's like the wolf will come save me if I'm taken captive.
Mm-hmm. Damn.
I don't know. I'm not sure if they're hinting at something about the Red Wedding here, but it just struck me the parallel there. Outlaw to take you captive and sell you to Lannisters. That's what Walder Frey did. So maybe it will be wolves that come and take revenge for that. But anyway, Branchild, why do you torment yourself? I'd sooner be a wolf. And then he says, oh, this is the part I was thinking of. Okay. Then I could live in the wood and sleep when I wanted. I could find Arya and Sansa. I'd smell where they were and go save them. And when Robb went to battle, I'd fight beside him like Grey Wind. I'd tear out the Kingslayer's throat with my teeth, rip, and then the war would be over, and everyone would come back to Winterfell.
If I was a wolf. If I was a wolf,
I'd free all my Starks. So, you see what I'm talking about? They're talking about going to war with the wolves, potentially alluding to the Red Wedding. Summer would save us. So this is the return of Bran, the Summer King, from the cave. And then he's saying, if I was a wolf, then I could gather all the family together and we'd fight in a war. So yeah, it just seems like we're talking about the pack getting back together. Bran getting everybody back together.
And going after the Freys after he just got done complaining about the Walders.
Right. Just got done complaining. And they said, let's put them in the Godswood. Well, the Godswood is where dead spirits live. So I think putting them in the Godswood might be, well, I guess it's similar to throwing somebody in the river, throwing them in the sea. But we're gonna get to even more clear foreshadowing. So let's skip ahead. Howling lost its savor. Okay, why don't you pick it up with when the Walders had arrived from the twins?
Is this where we're only that was before the game?
That's coming up. I can get us to that. When the Walders had arrived from the twins, it had been Rickon who wanted them gone. A baby of 4, he had screamed that he wanted mother and father and Robb, not these strangers. It had been up to Bran to soothe him and bid the Freys welcome. He had offered them meat and mead and a seat by the fire, and even Maester Lewin had said afterward that he'd done well.
Only that was before the game. And this is where we get to the Lord of the Crossing game. The game was played with a log, a staff, a body of water, and a great deal of shouting. The water was the most important. Walder and Walder assured Bran. war falling into the river. You could use a plank or even a series of stones, and a branch could be your staff. You didn't have to shout, but without water, there was no game. As Maester Lewin and Sir Roderick were not about to let the children go wandering off into the Wolf's Wood in search of a stream, they made do with one of the murky pools in the God's Wood. Walder and Walder had never seen hot water bubbling from the ground before, but they both allowed how it would make the game even better. Both of them were called Walder. Big
Let me just,
Walder said,
Tim, pardon me. I just want to
Mhm.
point out that in Norse mythology, wells refer to springs as well. So the three wells under Yggdrasil are springs, really. So when they talk
Mhm.
about Walder being thrown down a well, this is still a well. This is a spring that they're playing over. So
That's just more George and his wordplay.
mm-hmm.
So Big Walder said there were bunches of Walders at the Twins, all named after the boy's grandfather, Lord Walder Frey. We have our own names at Winterfell, Rickon told him haughtily when we heard
I forgot about that.
that.
I forgot about that.
But it's like, really, Rickon? How many Brandons have there been?
That's true. That's true. You're named after your uncle, buddy. We have our own names at Winterfell. That's
That's
just
just from the mouths of babes. The way their game was played, you laid the log across the water, and one player stood in the middle with a stick. He was the Lord of the Crossing, and when one of the other players came up, he had to say, I am the Lord of the Crossing. Who goes there? And the other player had to make up a speech about who they were and why they should be allowed to cross. The Lord could make them swear oaths and answer questions. They didn't have to tell the truth, but the oaths were binding unless they said mayhaps. So the trick was to say mayhaps. So the Lord of the Crossing didn't notice. And that's exactly what Walder Frey says to Robb Stark right before the Red Wedding. He slips in a mayhaps.
he does just because
Yeah.
he's a cheeky bastard.
And
And
because
he's
he probably played this game too as a kid, 4-year-old
absolutely.
Walder.
And so he's having a little joke to himself. Yeah. And he's like, well, I did say mayhaps and you didn't catch me. But of course, again, I want to point out the correlation to the Black Gate, which you have to say the Night's Watch oaths to pass. So here it's all about giving the right speech. Go ahead.
Yeah. Then you could try and knock the Lord into the water, and you got to be Lord of the Crossing, but only if you said mayhaps. Otherwise, you were out of the game. The Lord got to knock anyone in the water anytime he pleased, and he was the only one who got to use a stick. So
Oh,
this is
that's interesting. Okay, because when I was reading the Freyr myth earlier, remember I said he lost his sword and he had to fight Suthor, the fire giant, without a sword. So here
Mhm.
we have this thing where only one person has a sword. That's interesting. But yeah, okay, so keep going.
In practice, the game seemed to come down to mostly shoving, hitting, and falling into the water, along with a lot of loud arguments about whether or not someone had said mayhaps. Little Walder was Lord of the Crossing more often than not.
And of course,
He,
oh, I was about to say what the narrative is saying.
yeah,
Carry
he
on.
was Little Walder, even though he was tall and stout, with a red face and a big round belly. Big Walder was sharp faced and skinny and half a foot shorter. He's 52 days older than me, Little Walder explained, so he was bigger at first, but I grew faster. We're cousins, not brothers, added Big Walder, the little one. I'm Walder's son of Jamos. My father was Lord Walder's son by his fourth wife. He's Walder's son of Merit. His grandmother was Lord Walder's third wife. Okay, so yeah, this is the lot. So shout out to Fantasy Haven, who documented all 157 named Freys in our main story and broke down the Frey lines. So Little Walder is from the line of Crakehall Freys. That's why he's so big and burly. And Big Walder is from the line of Blackwood Freys. So Big Walder has old god connections. He's ahead of me in the line of succession, even though I'm older. Only by 52 days, Little Walder objected, and neither of us will ever hold the twins, stupid. Big Walder is 51st in line, and Little Walder is 52nd in line, just to give you an idea of how far in the line of
How many
succession they
people
are.
would have to die? But Freys are dying, so
Yeah. I will, Big Walder declared. We're not, and this is big boast. He's 51st in line, but Big Walder, the Blackwood Frey, declares, I will, and the one who has old god connections and dead weirwood tree symbolism, he's the one who just declares, I will be Lord of the Crossing. We're not the only Walders either. Sir Stevron has a grandson, Black Walder. He's fourth in line of succession. And there's Red Walder, Sir Emmon's son, and Bastard Walder, who isn't in the line at all. He's called Walder Rivers, not Walder Frey. Plus, there's a girl named Walda. Mm-hmm. And Tyr. You always forget Tyr.
Oh, there's your Tyr, little Norse Tyr reference here.
He's Waltyr, not Walder, Big Walder said airily, and he's after us, so he doesn't matter. Anyhow, I never liked him.
That's funny. Like, they dismiss anyone after them in the line of succession, but they're 50th, which means 49 other Freys are like, they don't matter. They're after us.
So, which was yada, 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 shouts and splashes.
So the point of there being a Tyr amongst the Freys, well, what is Tyr? He puts his hand in the wolf's mouth and it eats his hand. So maybe there'll be there's another clue about wolves coming to eat the Freys.
Yeah. So I think we can skip some of this. The shouts and splashes soon drew others. Palla, the kennel girl, Kane's boy Kalen, Tom too, whose father Fat Tom
no, actually,
had died.
No, there's something that's worth reading here. It said he watched wistfully while the Walders contested with Turnip, the cook's boy, and Joseph's girls, Bandy and Shira. The Walders had decreed that Bran should be the judge and decide whether or not people had said mayhaps, but as soon as they started playing, they forgot all about him. So that's kind of more foreshadowing for King Bran. If you think about it, like, you should be the judge.
You should be the judge.
But then people forget about him because he, is a wayward king or something. I don't know.
Oh, so go ahead, the shouts and splashes soon drew others. Palla, the kennel girl, Kane's boy Callan, Tom too, whose father Fat Tom had died with Bran's father at King's Landing. Before very long, every one of them was soaked in muddy. Palla was brown from head to heel with moss in her hair. Oh, so they all look like children of the forest right now. Brown and green with moss.
So this is more about the phrase as others returning to nature, potentially. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Palla was brown from head to heel, moss in her hair, breathless from laughter. Bran had not heard so much laughing since the night the bloody raven came. If I had my legs, I'd knock all of them into the water, he thought bitterly. No one would ever be Lord of the Crossing but me.
Love that thought. That's pretty fierce right there.
Yeah, Bran is death. Finally, Rickon came running into the Godswood, Shaggydog at his heels. He watched Turnip and Little Walder struggle for the stick until Turnip lost his footing and went in with a huge splash, arms waving. Rickon yelled, Me now! I want to play! Little Walder beckoned him on, and Shaggydog started to follow. No, Shaggy, his brother commanded. Wolves can't play. You stay with Bran. And he did. Until Little Walder had smacked Rickon with the stick, square across his belly. Before Bran could blink, the Black Wolf was flying over the plank. There was blood in the water. The Walders were shrieking red murder. Rickon sat in the mud laughing, and Hodor came lumbering, shouting, Hodor! 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 After that, oddly, Rickon decided he liked the Walders.
Okay, so there's more to read, but let's pause there because I think at this point, this paragraph has got to be exploding to our live chat. Let's just go through. It's not just that they were knocked in the... Look at the language here. Before, Wolves can't play the game, and they didn't until this happened. And then they come flying in over the plank, over the bridge. Mm-hmm. There was blood in the water. The Walders were shrieking red murder. The Red Wedding is a giant murder at the Twins. So we're talking about the Red Wedding, but now it's flipped around and the Freys are screaming bloody murder. Rickon is laughing. Mm-hmm. And then who comes lumbering in? Hodor, whose real name is Walder. So we got 3 Walders now. And it says, after that, oddly, Rickon decided he liked the Walders. They never
Mhm.
played Lord of the Crossing again. So I guess Rickon is the winner, kind of, isn't he? Like,
Yeah, because
he's
they
shut the
smack.
game down.
Yeah, they smack the wolf. The wolf bites back, and they never play the game again.
So this could definitely be foreshadowing the phrase losing the twins and Rickon
Mhm.
and his wolf pack being the ones who shut it down. This is awesome. Then it says they played other games, monsters and maidens, blah, 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 come into my castle, all sorts of things. With Rickon by their side, the Walders plundered the kitchens, tossed bones to the pups, and trained with wooden swords under Sir Roderick's sharp eye. So it's almost like Rickon is now Lord of the Crossing. He's leading
He's the
the
last
phrase
Lord.
around. Rickon even showed them the deep vaults under the earth where the stone mason was carving father's tomb. You had no right, Bran screamed at his brother when he heard. That was our place, a Stark place, but Rickon never cared. Rickon brought the phrase down into the crypts, guys. He brought the phrase down into the realm of death with nary a care. So maybe Rickon will bring House Frey to their death, to the underworld, with nary a care, laughing in the mud. Do you see where we're going with this?
Yep.
So let's see. I think that is all we needed to get.
Yeah. Oh, so there's some Night's King symbolism there too, because he brought others into a Stark domain with nary a care. That's like Night's King taking an other woman into the wall with him. If Night's King is a Stark.
Perhaps. And Osha has some of that Night's Queen symbolism, who's, carrying Rickon around. Last hero is usually a daughter of Night's Queen, though. That's almost like Jon and Lyanna. That's always the case. So Rickon becomes Osha's symbolic child when they travel together. So slick
Yeah.
Rickon. The big Dickon energy.
Mhm.
Big Rickon energy. This is the Rickoning. So, yeah, you can see what's going on here. This is pretty good stuff. Rickon and his wolf, Shaggydog, shutting down the crossing. So now when we talk about the Billy Goat's gruff, so it'll be Rickon so there's the Billy Goat's gruff gives us the goats throwing Walder into the river. This gives us Rickon and the wolf throwing the Walders in the river, in the well. But we know that Rickon is going to be with an army of Skagosi riding goats. So you can see how this is all foreshadowing for Rickon and his Skagosi army to end up down at the twins, shutting this stuff down, ripping it up. Now throwing the phrase back into the river is good. Others going back into the Green Sea symbolism. But you know what else would fit that symbolism, Tim? If the Skagosi ate some of the phrase, who we know are tasty and make good pies. Already know that.
Yep.
And so if the Skagosi have another feast of skein and feast on the phrase, that's like getting eaten kind of back into the weirwood net. If the others are supposed to go back into the weirwood trees, they are getting swallowed up by the trees. We've talked about the black gates swallowing people up. So there's important symbolism with the weirwood trees eating people. So if these Skagosi worshippers of the old gods, literally they're, riding the goats. Remember, riding a horned animal is like riding the weirwood tree, whose branches are like the antlers, of a horned animal. And so riding the goats, they're going to come down and eat some phrase. I really think we're going to get some cannibalism. And I think it's even possible that the TV show, when they showed us Arya eating a bunch of phrase at the twins, obviously they could have just taken that idea from Manderly and stuff. But maybe it'll be Rickon and his Skagosi that are going to be eating people at the twins. So
Possible. Yeah. If the Red Wedding 2.0 turns into another Feast of Skein, we're definitely going to have wolves eating phrase, and that's to highlight the stories the phrase made up, that Rob turned into a wolf and ate Jingle Bell and all of that. No, there'll definitely be some real in Red Wedding 2.0. I'm sure some wolves are going to eat some phrase, but yeah, we can't we can't outright put past the fact that maybe there will be some human eating human too. Rickon and his Skagosi. That this could be also a retelling of the Feast of Skane, eating the
Right,
others.
right, because the Red Wedding was a feast that turned
Mhm.
into a murder. So why not a murder feast?
Yeah,
Like it kind of flips. Even the Feast of Skane, the word Skane, remember I said it means to protect and to take care of?
Mhm.
Well, that's a guest right reference, I think. The Red Wedding, they
yeah,
came in and ate bread and salt and were supposed to be under the protection of the Freys, and then they killed them at a dinner. So that was
yeah.
a feast of that could be why he chose the word skein for that cannibalism feast, because he's alluding to guest right. So yeah, maybe
And
this.
so on that point, because we've been talking about like corrupted children's tales with Billy Goat's Gruff, Where the Wild Things Are, and Treasure Island, we also got to throw in some of our in-world stories from Old Nan. The Rat Cook. The Freys are rats. They're described as very weaselly.
Oh.
You know, they're rat-like. They're twitchy. They're mice. They're ugly bridge trolls. They got very mousy features. So
And they're
the
gray.
yeah, and the Rat Cook is a story about about guest right not being honored.
And we've already seen the Frey cannibalism. We've already seen George feeding the Freys their own Freys. So maybe there's more coming, essentially, is the point. Yeah. And maybe Rickon, just like when he wakes up from his dream of being king of the monsters, there'll be a hot meal waiting for him at the end. There you go. This probably is a good place to stop, although we will ask for if you have any final questions, but this is pretty much the presentation here. So, yeah. Fun Winds of Winter predictions. There you go. We've given you, so there's the idea that Rickon may potentially be the right hand man to the king in the north at first, but eventually the line may continue through him. We've given you the idea of him helping to retake or just take down the Freys, if you will, throwing Walder in the river, just as Catelyn was thrown in the river. So that would really make a lot of sense. That'd be very poetic.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we've got this bit about Bran drawing the Starks back together. So yeah, this has been a pretty good Winds of Winter prediction. Here with 1,000 Voices, thanks for all your great comments. I have a question. Is there a shirt in production with Davos's face that says "Boat Goat"? Not as of yet. Not as of yet. I'm not even going to attempt to make sense of that comment. Let's see here. About Elon Musk. Could Skane have been a mass sacrifice ritual? Definitely. Cannibalism and weirwood sacrifice kind of, I feel like they get confused with each other.
Mm.
Yeah, a murder feast is a feast for crows because a bunch of crows is a murder. That's a good point. Do you think Jojen was one of the broken dreamers? So I see. I don't think so. I think that broken dreamers thing is a reference to the others. I don't know that there are other. I think they're because they're impaled on ice spires. So like Jojen's not impaled on an ice spire. It doesn't really make sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, a couple super chats here. Oh, at least one. And that's what I just answered. Okay, we're caught up. Very good.
Yeah. Oh, so yeah, because failed dreamers being impaled on ice spires. So going back to again, like Hero with 1,000 Voices and the analogy about like this astral turnpike, taking it further, like these highways, like our characters taking these different magic highways onto the astral turnpike, like Mel's taking the fire route, Bran's taking the green route. Well, it seems like Euron is taking the ice route because he's going, and it seems like, if in my humble opinion, the blue highway to the astral turnpike is probably the roughest road. So being impaled on ice spires, and if Euron is a failed dreamer, him taking like the other route, the icy road to the into this whole astral realm thing could be a reference to that, and more proof that Euron may be a failed dreamer.
Yeah, Euron makes sense because he's going the way of ice transformation. I agree. Great stream. You guys looked at sounded awesome. Will the green eyes of Shaggydog relate to the green eyes of the dragon, the cannibal, later on in the narrative? Well, that was what I was trying to figure out. So I think it is about cannibalism and weirwood magic. So check this out. We just talked about maybe Walder get thrown in the river, but maybe some Freys will get eaten. Well, Hodor Walder is going to get eaten at the crossing, potentially. As Tim said, the black gate, holding that black gate mouth open might means that he'll get swallowed by it. So if Walder Frey or one of the Freys are eaten at the crossing, that would parallel that idea. And I think, and the rat cook, again, the point with the rat in the rat cook is white with red eyes. That's talking about a weirwood tree consuming its own descendants. So like a green seer goes into the weirwood tree, but then his family members are sometimes being sacrificed to his tree to feed him blood magic power. So he is consuming his descendants. And then if you look at, even if his descendants are green seers, they're also going into the tree. And so the tree is like the rat consuming all these descendants, right? So the point of Shaggydog and the cannibal and all this stuff, I think, like I said, it's basically anytime you hear cannibalism, we're talking about weirwood net stuff. So I don't know how do I tie the cannibal? Like, what's the link between the black and green? I guess the idea is like, when we see the green eyes, that represents like green. They both have green fire. Like Shaggy's eyes are like green fire. The cannibal literally breathes green fire. So this would be a metaphor for green magic, obviously.
Yeah.
Well, why is it on black? I guess it's like Bran down in the cave eating Jojen paste in the darkness, I guess.
Well, there is so the children, right? They all have golden eyes, but the ones who are dreamers are the ones who are born with either red or green eyes. And of the Stark direwolves, all of them have golden eyes except for two. Ghost, who is white with red eyes, and Shaggydog, who is black with green eyes. So they have the eyes. They're the only ones of the wolves that have the eyes that correspond to the children colors, the ones who are to be seers. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the reasons why some people think that Rickon might actually be a stronger green seer and a stronger warg than Bran is, because he has the green-eyed wolf, and Jon is like a very powerful warg, but it's all, he just hasn't tapped into it. It's all subconscious, but he has the weirwood. He has the wolf with the weirwood coloring.
Yeah. So like, for example, when you look at the cannibal, I think, as I'm going to show you in this video that's coming out this week, the cannibal seems to be from a different bloodline from before the Targaryens came to Dragonstone. So a different line of dragons, not related to the Targaryen dragons. He is trying to kill off the Targaryen dragons, potentially. So what's the Targaryen sigil? You can see it on Tim's wall. A red dragon on black. Well, cannibal, he's got green eyes on black. And the black dragon, so the Targaryen sigil mirrors their dragons, their black dragons, Drogon and Balerion. Both have red eyes, red trim, black fire shot through with red. Okay, so when you see the cannibal, and he's a black dragon with green eyes, you could almost give him a sigil that's opposite of the Targaryens, a green dragon on black. So it makes you think of like the weirwood net, Tim, which the weirwood originally, they had green leaves, and then they got defiled by Azor Ahai the dragon, and they've turned all bloody and red and fiery. So the cannibal, again, is from a older lineage, and he's the green associated one. So like, maybe that tracks,
Yeah. And there's also green on black. So there's Blackwater, the Battle of Blackwater, the green wildfire burning on the black water.
That's that demon eats its own too. It's cannibalizing as well. It's a green demon floating on the river, on the water, and it's eating his own. So again, we see the same themes. Yeah. There's some sort of through line here. Like, I don't know that I can say it clearly in one sentence. Oh, watch out. Kirsty's cooking and stirring up the pot here. What's going on?
Cannibalism. Cain and Abel, Balerion and Cannibal, Skagos, Stoneheart, fam. We have the concept of an idea.
I think that's about what I sounded like the last 10 minutes, something like that comment. I'm trying to highlight the pattern. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly. I'd have to go and study cannibalism as a whole, but we keep seeing it over and over with this green magic stuff.
Because if it was black with blue eyes, right? Like if Shaggydog had blue eyes, and with then we would say shade. We would be able to easily say shade of the evening. Ghost is a weirwood wolf, and black with blue eyes would make him a shade of the evening wolf. But no, the black on green. It's trying to pinpoint that one.
It's kind of like the lost thread of the original green magic, which is hiding in the darkness and needs to be like recalled or something like that. That's how it feels to me. Cannibal would be from the Valyrians who built Dragonstone. Dragonstone was built 200 years before the Targaryens came there. So those are different Valyrians who obviously had dragons because they built Dragonstone on Dragonstone for 200 years before the Targs. So Cannibal would be from that group of Valyrians if he's not a Targaryen dragon.
Through line, like a turnpike. Yes, Sean. I'm from Pennsylvania, and I live in the rear Philly. Every time I drive to Philly, I take the turnpike. So I'm used to it. I call it a turnpike. That's what it is to me.
I say highway, but I've driven on the turnpikes in New Jersey and Philly before, so I know the word.
It's the on ramps to the Astral Turnpike. That's how I'm going to refer to it, because that's what makes the most sense to me. The blue highway, the red highway, and the green highway.
Cool, guys. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this stream. I think we have, again, delivered. Again, we didn't just tease. I think we delivered on the Rickon stream here. So here it is. Winds of Winter predictions have been predicted. And yeah, I really like that find with Rickard, King of Winter in the Crypts, who went down to the neck with an army and defeated the Marsh King. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, like I said, I think the point we're getting at is like I don't think we should expect Rickon's story to be a Shaggydog story. Like I said earlier, I think the Shaggydog thing, I think it's a bluff. Rickon's probably going to be more important than people give him credit for.
Yeah, and to the extent he is a powerful warg, we certainly could see him join up with Arya's wolf pack. I've seen foreshadowing for Bran piloting some of those wolves too, so we really could see a dire wolf pack, messing, I want to cuss, but yeah, effing stuff up. So thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you back next Sunday. Watch out for the cannibal video this week. I'm not sure what day this week, but remember, as soon as you see it in your feed, please click on it. That helps me a great deal. Those clicks in the first hour and the first minutes that it pops up. So that's like the best thing you can do. Obviously, leaving a comment is great, but yeah, please look out for the cannibal video. It'll be well worth it. A lot of fun making it. Filmed it in the new house just this past week, and I just teased you with some of the ideas, but I've got a lot more. Ties into Corlys and Sea Smoke and House Velaryon and this Valyrian history, so it's pretty fun stuff. And as always, make sure you're subscribed to the Grey Ways Tim channel for lots of good Grey Ways Tim content, such as the cats knocking over the computers and rereadings, and there's Dornish plotting and all kinds of stuff. So thanks a lot, guys. Thank you, Tim, for being my guest, and thanks for coming out, everyone. And I'll see you soon.
Thanks for having me. Good night.